Hello, and welcome to Crushing Classical Podcast. I am your host, Tracy Friedlander, and I'm so excited you're joining us for this interview. On the show today, I have Chris Grymes, professional clarinet player and founder of Open G Records in New York. Chris and I spent a lot of time doing gigs in North Carolina, freelancing mostly with the North Carolina Symphony. And then he up and left us all here for greener pastures, or should I say buildings and pavement, because he went to the Big Apple. I can say that I sure do miss your antics and shenanigans on gigs, Chris. I really do. And I'm so happy for you because it looks like you're creating really awesome things. And we are going to get to the bottom of that right now. So welcome, Chris. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, thanks. I'm really happy to do it. I'm really complimented you asked me to come and talk to you. It's very happy to do it. It's cool.
Awesome. So can you just describe yourself for me in one sentence?
I think you would have to use words. I don't know if a sentence would work, but I think individual words might. And
okay, yeah, do that.
I think bright, driven, funny, and fucked up are probably. Actually, I was thinking about writing. If I was writing my book, or if I was thinking about writing a blog recently, because you can get a real different idea of what people's lives are like if you just look at their social media. If someone's good at their social media, that's a total fake lie. You can make yourself look golden on Facebook when not much is happening. So the thought that I have for myself is complete success, total disaster.
And that's like what we, want to get to the bottom of. It's true, because you're like, everything is all shiny and roses on Facebook, but what's really the nitty gritty of what goes behind, like
the nitty gritty is that everyone is faking it.
Yeah,
it's true. If they tell you they're not faking it, they're lying. Everyone's making it up.
Right, but yet we all believe everything we read.
Yeah, so. It's this weird confirmation bias that we have against ourselves, where we think that what someone else is doing when it has a little bit of mystery must be cooler than what you're doing.
Yeah.
You don't have the information that you actually think you have. So your imagination fills in the gaps with stuff that, must be cool. But for the most part, everybody who's out there making a living as a musician is really hustling and is really working hard on any level. And it's mostly just flying by the seat of your pants.
Is that what you say you did with starting a record label? I was looking at your website because I was like, this is a record label. I know Chris started a record label. And I started looking around your website. I'm like, this is way more than a record label.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like representing people. So tell me more. Tell me all about what Open G is.
Well, so the start of the label happened. You knew me during this part of my life. I had a part of my life that I call the crucible now, which is my mom died very suddenly of brain cancer. Then 6 months after that, I got married. And then 6 months after that, my wife's mom died. And that was just like a year of I don't even know where I am. And then at the end of the year was worse shit. And so, but during that year, after my mom died, I was a professor at East Carolina University when you and I were gigging together with the symphony. And they were cool enough to give me a semester's leave to deal with the aftermath of everything. And they also gave me $10,000 without any strings attached to make a recording, which as basically a thank you, it's just, or whatever. I was able to take an unpaid leave, so they were able to pay my replacement and not have to find extra money in the budget. So I think as, both from my service and as a, I'm sorry, and also a thank you for being able to do that for the university. They gave me the money to make the recording. But like university money goes, if you don't spend it, you lose it. So I had a year to use that 10 grand. And so I had to make all of that recording during the time. I had to sort of use all that money. So I had to do the physical recording. I had to hire the guy to do the editing. Same guy that I luckily happened to luck into working with because of a personal recommendation, a guy named Adam Abeshouse, who had a hole in his schedule and also has a couple of Grammys and is also just the nicest guy ever. And it was a very tough period for me. I remember, my mom died in the end of February, and I was recording a lot of this stuff in September, and that's just, it's insane. I'd not touched my horn for a few months during that time. And this guy was like half Yoda, half Freud, an all good guy. And we built a relationship over the course of doing the record. And I went to his house, which is just about a half hour north of the city, to do the editing and mastering with him. I basically just did the whole process all the way through with him. And at the end of it, I kind of sat back in my chair. We had just finished the editing. He was literally burning the master CD with all of the copyright information, that had belonged to me. And I was like, so what now? And now we have this thing. What do you do with it? And this was in 2012. And he's like, you know what, man? I say you don't give it to anybody. I say that you publish it yourself. He's like, look, I could give your record to Albany or any number of small labels, New Amsterdam, something like that. And maybe you get a review out of it. Maybe you don't. And you certainly don't get another recording out of it. He's like, if you own it yourself, then you can do whatever you want with it. And you never have to share ownership or any sort of any sort of intellectual ownership or property ownership with anyone else. And you could completely own the direction. And I sat on that for a little while, and I thought, not only do I really like that idea, I'm a huge fan of Radiohead, which started producing their own stuff and releasing it their own way. I'm a huge fan of a singer named Ani DeFranco, who started her own label when she was 18, mainly to produce her own stuff, but then branched out and is sort of a small mogul. And I have extremely talented friends, and what I'm going to sort of return to, I'm sure, over the course of this interview over and over, is that I basically got into music for the friendship. I had a very close friend who also played the clarinet. He now is the principal clarinetist of the St. Louis Symphony, and he and I, from 7th grade on, just were inseparable, and our hobby was doing this. It could have been anything. It could have been computers or guns or something. I don't know what, but we just both happened to have an aptitude for music and both had clarinets, and so he's the first person I thought of, first of all, when I thought of making a label, not just for myself. I didn't want to do a vanity thing. I wanted to have something that had lasting impact, that would mean more than just myself. And so he was my look, he's my guy. So I said, I'll make this for me and Scott, and then a couple of other people as well. And I really, when I was now having the idea of, okay, so what's a record label in 2012 at that point, or looking forward to now, I don't really know what that means anymore, but I know that I enjoy listening to podcasts like this. I'm fans of certain ones, like Joe Rogan, gives a really interesting, completely unedited podcast. But more edited ones like Hardcore History and such. I've always been a fan of long form radio and interviews. I've always been a fan of concise writing. And I really thought, I thought about when I was making the label, what do you care about music? When people care about music, what do they really care about? And I think more than anything else now, they care about the people who actually make it. Like, I know all sorts of shit about Radiohead. I don't know those guys. I don't know jack about Lang Lang or the fucking guy who conducts the New York Phil. I don't know who those guys are. I know what they look like. I know what they do.
Yeah.
But I don't know who they are. And I find that deeply uninteresting.
Yeah, isn't that where the secret sauce is? Because people want to know people.
Yeah.
It's like we forgot that somewhere. And that's actually something that really bothers me about playing in orchestra, is that, like, there's someone else who runs the show behind the scenes. The management does that. And then they represent that the symphony is coming. So they tell you about it on social media, and you don't know who that person is who's like putting out this, you know.
Yeah, it's the face of the organization in a certain, and
Yeah,
maybe
but
you
who
get to
is
do
that?
like an instrument petting zoo or something like that
Right.
with kids or something. But by and large, you guys show up in, or I shouldn't say you guys. I haven't played in an orchestra in forever. So if I say you guys, I'm not trying to be pejorative. Show up
Right.
in tuxedos and black dresses and pants, and
Yeah.
then the audience sits there for 2 hours, and then you both go home.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
Yeah.
there are super interesting people who are up there on stage. Maybe that guy
Yeah.
blows glass. This guy over here is like a world champion banjo player or something. It
Right.
just, it's full of interesting people who do interesting shit besides like, play third trombone on Till Eulenspiegel or something like that for 45
Yeah.
minutes. It just, and rock and pop and hip hop bands have figured that out. There's a lot of fan service that goes into, hey, here's pictures of my daily life. Here's what I'm doing today. You
Yeah.
can, and in the age of Twitter, maybe your favorite celebrity doesn't respond, but you can actually reach out and touch them. You can send them a tweet. Maybe they're never going to see it, or their team is never going to see it or whatever, but you did that.
Right.
You talked to Drake, even if he didn't talk back to you.
Yeah.
And who cares about talking to somebody in an orchestra?
Some people might.
Some people might, but I find on the whole that like to make something new, out of thin air, like a record label, you have to sort of create a fan base.
Yeah.
But you have to, the thinking is that if you can get 2,000 people in your quote unquote tribe, which is both a small and a huge number,
Yeah.
then that becomes, at that point, it can become a self-sustaining exercise. If you can get 2,000 people to truly buy into your idea, to really love what you're going to do and are going to buy what you put out and are going to read what you write, then that's a self-sustaining idea. But gaining that 2,000 people, well, how do you do that unless they get to know you?
Right. So
Who gives a shit about another clarinet player?
Exactly. So, and you're just spot on right now. So tell me, have you found 2,000 people to start,
I think I'm closing in on it.
Really? How did you do it?
Well, started out by a lot of deep thinking about what I wanted to make. And to actually create business plans of 5 and 10 years. And I knew going off the bat, or I read a lot about just basics starting a business. I just decided basically off the bat that I wasn't going to evaluate anything until about 5 years in. That it was going to take at least 5 years, and I'm creeping up on that 5 years now. That it would take 5 years to get somewhere, and at the end of that 5 years, that I would then sit down and make an evaluation about the direction of where I was going and all of that kind of stuff. But I talked to a few advisors. One really important one is a guy named Greg Sandow, who lives in the DC area, who teaches at Juilliard a class called Music in the Age of Pop, or Classical Music in the Age of Pop, and is a real expert on how orchestras and fine arts organizations are falling behind in the new media battles, and is a real believer in the kind of things that you and I are talking about, in personal, getting personal with music. And because the fact of the matter is that there's a lot about classical music that's fucking awesome, but
Right.
you could never, and I'm sure that there's stuff about like super serious trancy dance music that is fucking awesome, but you know what? I don't have an entree into it.
Mm-hmm.
If I had like if I had a friend who was like, listen, I'm going to give you the basics on why so many people love this stuff, and then you're going to understand.
Yeah.
Then I would get it. So that's what I want to be, in a sense, for people with classical music, is there's a there. Let me show you what that there is, but you can reach that by understanding why we're trying for it in the first place and how we're trying to get there. So another thing that I thought about with the, that coincides with the whole people believing or loving in personalities is the rise of sort of skill-based reality shows, specifically the Bravo shows Top Chef and Project Runway, which I got obsessed with for a while. And there's no reason why a Southern corn-raised boy like myself should know what an ampere waist is, or what how to sous vide something, But I know about cooking and fashion because I got interested in the personalities of the people and sort of like their drive to make something beautiful and creative. And I found that stuff that I before not even had no interest in, but could care less about, were things that I were fascinated by. And it was only because of people. So I thought, if you could continuously expose the process of making how we make classical music, the daily drudge work of the practice, the sort of the huge amount of setup that goes into the hour and a half that you spend on stage or whatever, is pretty interesting to me. So I thought no, it's okay. I'm going on for a while, but I thought it's sort of making a lifestyle kind of label of this is what the true actual lives of working artists are really like.
Right. Is that why you put that G sharp minor YouTube up?
Well, that's sort of yes. How to practice G sharp minor. Well, it's sort of part of an ongoing blog that I've stalled out on and really need to finish, about doing the daily work of being a very high level musician, which is what I really strive to be. I sometimes get there, sometimes really struggle.
Right.
But
so I should tell the audience, so what I was doing is kind of digging around and saying, what's Chris doing? Let's look at YouTube. And up came this how to practice in G sharp minor video.
Well,
and there were a lot of views, more than 500, and you had an ad. There was an ad on it. So do you get paid for ads?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's not much. It's not much. Well, it's all part of what I was doing at the time and what I'll get back into doing. It just, I was practicing. Every time that I practiced, I would throw on my video live stream. So, there was a time when I was preparing for a concerto when I was working between 4 and 6 hours a day, and I would I would do 2 or 3 sessions, and I would put them all on, from scales and warm-ups in the morning through reps, through memory work, all of that stuff. I got a little kind of burned out on it, but I'll probably go back to it. It gets a little invasive having people actually inside your practice room all the time, but
yeah.
It's also like a performance all the time. So if I'm going to write a blog, the first part is up about how you do your daily warm-ups and what kind of things you should be thinking about and how you should actually execute them, and then I bullshit my way through them, it doesn't really cement my point. So what I was trying to do was not only write, here's how you do it, but show every day, okay, now I'm going to sit down and do the long tones exactly like I said. I'm going to do the scale reps exactly like I said. I'm not going to drop reps. I'm not going to waste reps. I'm going to do it all right. And I found that it elevated my playing in a way, because I couldn't sit there and go, fuck this. I'm going to play 2 octaves of F major here, and then I'm going to move on to this, and I'm not really feeling it right now. Didn't have the option to do it if people are watching you and you have basically laid out your menu.
Right. But I think there's a lot of value in, hey, I don't feel like doing this, and I'm still going to do it, because that's a big part of
every fucking day.
Every day. Yeah. Yeah.
Every day. I think about, I think about a poet, Charles Bukowski, who was a fucking raging alcoholic dickhead, but a brilliant guy. And he wrote a line, and I'm going to misquote it, but it's close to this. It's something like, every day I get out of bed and I think, how in the hell am I going to get through this? And then I laugh at myself because that's what I thought yesterday too.
That's awesome.
You know, and it's just like you just keep walking forward, because otherwise, what else are you going to do?
Yeah, right. Your other choice is to stop, and then what do you get?
And there's an element of our art that is the routine, that is the process. Like Tai Chi, you know, it's not, you know, it's a form of physical fitness because of the discipline.
Right.
And that's, you know, that's the beauty of classical music, is you don't get the really beautiful technique. You don't really get the details of everything unless you've spent the time getting after it, and that's practice.
Oh, totally. So, Chris, I want to ask you about something that I always bring up on this show, and it's something I call the "fuck this" moment. and what it is the moment in your adult life or career where you're at a crossroads, and what you want and what you're doing. It's one way is what you want, and the other one is what you're doing. And your choice is the safe route or the unknown, and you chose the unknown. And I know that you did choose the unknown, so I wanted to know what your fuck this moment was.
Well, I think that the most, well, there's a what the fuck am I doing moment, and then there's a fuck this moment. So the first one, the what the fuck am I doing moment, is I had graduated from college. I was in my first job, which was a touring chamber music group. I did it for 2 years, and at the end of the first year, I told the guys in the group, I was like, all right, I'm going to give this one more year, and then I got to go be a professor. But I didn't have a job yet. So that spring semester of auditioning for jobs and knowing that I was leaving a job at 30 and not having anything in my hand was the most what the fuck am I doing moment. I mean, I really had, of all the times in my life besides the time with my mom's death, that I had the most pressure of what in the fuck am I going to do, was walking away from another job without another one in hand, just trusting that I'm talented, something's going to happen. Otherwise, I'm going to have to move back in with mom and dad. That was going to be what I would have to do. I had nothing else. So that was, luckily I got a job. Luckily that worked itself out. But
dude, I know. I moved back in with my parents. I know how that feels.
It's a lot of people are doing it. It's a scary fucking thing. I didn't want to do it. I didn't, actually, the first year of teaching, I had a interim position. So I had 9 months, and then I won the full-time position. But that 9-month contract paid me for 9 months, and I'd made enough to pay my rent and utilities for the summer, but not to live. And I did have to go back and live with my parents for that first summer. And it was like, that was some real shit. But my fuck this moment actually came more recently, actually within the last year. And you mentioned earlier that I've been producing things, and I sort of like have been producing things more, not more for other people, but as much for other people as for myself. And I was producing one particular thing that was actually a memorial concert for a composer who had passed. And one of the performers was such a complete nightmare in the organization and in the trying to rewrite the order of the program, just like putting their personality into everything. And it gave me incredible agita. I was just like, I couldn't sleep. I was like completely out of my mind with stress. And then following pretty close after that, I had another production for someone else. And again, a lot of outside pressure and like heartache and like weirdness and stuff that all worked out. It all was going to be fine in both cases, and all was fine in both cases. And it was just complete noise about nothing. And it just made me realize, to call back something that I said from the beginning that I said I would touch on again, was I got into this for the friendship. I got into music for relationships with my friends and people that I trust and believe in. And it just made me narrow my focus for Open G Records into you know what? I don't want to be a big label that produces a bunch of stuff that is sort of not necessarily related to each other. I want to do nothing except projects that I personally truly believe in. I don't have to be part of it. I don't have to like have my fingers in it because that's not what I believe in, but it's got to be something that I think is special, that involves someone that I think is special.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm just not fucking interested because I don't have the emotional capital to worry about someone else that I don't love. You know, I got a 3-year-old. I got a wife with a full-time job. I'm trying to be a working musician. I'm trying to be a record label guy. I'm trying to produce concerts. I don't really want to spend the hours that I have to myself worrying about what someone is doing or saying or what.
Right.
So that's my fuck this moment. And it just made me narrow my focus into I'm making beautiful projects with the people that I love. A Louis C.K. style, man. Just like singular visions of really great shit done with your team of people that you always work with. And, you know, at the end of my life, at the end of my output, then we'll look back at it and say whether it was fucking good or not. But, you know, that's basically,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, it's true. It seems to be like with the fuck this moment, this is what I'm getting from people when I ask this question, is that with the fuck this moment, you get the wanting, you zero in on what it is that you really, really want, and not just in your career, but how your career and all the things you want relate to everything you want in your life. Like not just career, but everything, family, friends, partners, kids,
And
all of it.
Not to plug my own operation, but a podcast that I did with someone that is someone that you should absolutely interview for this is Paola Prestini, who is the artistic director at National Sawdust and is the artistic director at her own label called Vision into Art, who is a working composer who has been an impresario in the city since she was a student at Juilliard, and now, you know, in her prime is the very model of what a 21st century artist, entrepreneur, activist is. And she had something germane to say about this very thing, which was when you're, and I'm going to misquote her, but I'm going to try to get the gist of it is, when you're looking to make something happen for yourself, when you're striking out on your own in music or in art, you have to think of a few things. And one is what hole is there right now? What is not being served in the artistic community that you're in that needs to be served? Is it a concert presenter? Is it somebody to organize players? Is it something that you have been, you've been wanting to have a band. You've been wanting to do this. Is there a hole there? Okay.
Yeah.
And then if there is, why are you the person to fill it? You know, not just like, oh, I'm going to go do that, but why specifically are you that person? And then when you're able to answer both of those questions, then you have you already have kind of a direct elevator pitch almost of like why you're doing it in the first place. Because if you just are going after something because you see that there's something missing there, you'll probably fail at it because you're just patching it up with spackle. But if you're actually if you're bringing a structural change to something or structural ideas, then you've got something to do. So what's the hole? How can you fill it? And why are you the person to fill it?
The how and the why is what I like. The why you is the greatest question. Really, it is.
But that's at the heart of why people are successful and why they're not. Because if you know why you're doing something, it's a lot easier to get to the how.
Mm-hmm. Sure is. That's amazing. That's really inspiring.
You should fucking talk to her. She is,
I'm going to.
She's a genius. She just flat out is. And she has a miraculous ability to get people to say yes and to put the right people in the room together and to I mean, she produces. Listen, I mean, this woman, is the artistic director of a major new house in its first year of operations, which went brilliantly. She had 3 operas done last month, I think. She did a huge opera premiere at Prospect Park that had like 6,000 people. She just does crazy shit all the time, and she nails it because she's smart and she's built the personal relationships where I talk about I do it because of friendship. You'll do stuff for Paola because she's built the relationships that you can trust her. She's going to do what she says she's going to do, and she's going to do it with a smile on her face, and she's going to make you feel good.
Yeah.
That's, what the fuck else do you want?
Integrity is what it is, really.
Integrity is a major part of it, and people know when you have it. I'm sorry, I'm going to talk some more. Another podcast that I listened to is Jalen Rose, who was a member of the Fab Five in Michigan, a professional basketball player for a long time. And he's a stand-up guy, and he's like, listen, there are 2 ways. He talks about deep professional athletics a lot, like what it's like to be a pro and what pros think about. And he's like, there are 2 ways to really make your mark in the world of professional athletics. And I think professional music is very similar. 1, be the greatest of all time. Or 2, be a stand-up guy. Be somebody that people can count on. Be somebody who will be there when you say that you will, and do the things that you're supposed to do. Because 99.9% of us are not Magic Johnson.
Right. But
there are a lot of pros that are working. Not everybody needs to be Magic Johnson to be a high-level working professional, but you do need to be a stand-up person. You do need to show up with a smile on your face, and you need to answer your phone, and you need to show up on time and do the basic things that seem boring but actually are extremely meaningful. And it's personal.
Yeah, it is personal, isn't it? Who's that? Jalen what?
Jalen Rose. I think it's I'll see. You'll find it if you look for it on iTunes, but it's on the Grantland network. I think it's Jalen and Jacoby or something like that. But it's pretty cool.
It's true that there's a lot of parallels with professional sports and professional music. Like I've said that before. Like trying to get into a top 5 orchestra is like trying to get in the Major League Baseball team or something.
100%, or putting yourself in a position to hit that audition just right is a lot like, hitting your prime at the Olympics, in the sprint or in the gymnastics events. You have a tightrope to walk. A lot of fucking people are doing it on a super high level. What is the difference between the people who are successful and the people who aren't? And it's preparation, and it's the mental side.
Yeah, it's totally the mental side. And then for the people who know, there are people who might be good enough to do that and they can't nail the audition. And I feel like we all look at our careers as a classical musician as black and white. Like you either get into this orchestra or you don't. So many people look at it like that. And then it's either you are a success or you're not a success. And that's got to change because look at what you're doing. Look at this Paula Pristini woman who sounds amazing. And there's so many people who are doing something different and something inspiring and something valuable for the community. And it doesn't mean that you have to do it one way or the highway.
Well, the simple fact of the matter is that the jobs are not there in the quantity that they used to be. There used to be every mid-level town had an orchestra that you could at least make a semi-living with. Or, you could teach at the local college or what have you. Even professorships have dried up. Everything has gone to adjunct. So it's basically essential, especially for musicians that are coming up now, to be entrepreneurs, to have these branch off skills, because the days of just going through conservatory and hoping that you're going to get an orchestra job somewhere are it happens. People do it, but those jobs just ain't there anymore.
Right. And
you
it's
have
a world
to be
market.
clever.
It's a world market too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's another curve in the. I couldn't even think of a good metaphor. It's just another step. I think of musicians on a long continuum, all the way back to monks, and especially us performers of, people going from town to town, plying in their trade, making a living. Most guys in Mozart's day were just like gigging musicians, making their living, doing the thing, got their side gig. It's just the same. It's
Right.
the same thing, it's just the hustle. It's just that the hustle is digital now, and the hustle is personal now in a way that you couldn't get personal with before, because even when you and I were going to school, imagine being able to record. You could, when you push stop, you say it's going to take a couple seconds for this to work itself out. And if you wanted to, you could probably publish it immediately.
Yeah.
To undergraduate you and me, that's wizardry.
Right.
It's like, so both, musicians right now or artists right now are at this confluence of time where one side of the cliff you're falling off. It's the industry is not in any way, shape, or form on any spoke of the wheel what it was 50 years ago. And yet the technology is such that you can get your own statement out. Yeah. Now it's a question of working your way through all of the noise.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's like the opposite problem. I mean,
Yes.
You get this new thing and now you still have a problem, but.
So that's the question of getting the 2,000 people who believe in you. And that's, that's by having something to say and saying it and giving good content and being just consistent in your message and not giving up and just, mm-hmm. and all of it is frustrating. Like, there aren't many times where I say to myself, this is fucking awesome. I'm having a really good time doing this. Those moments, they come, it's like if something like the thing that you were going to ask about St. Louis, I saw in your questions.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. That's what was my next question. I wanted to ask you because I saw you had a collaboration in St. Louis, and I want to know more about what that was. What that was.
Well, look, this all comes again from the E-Day fix for me today of personal relationships. I mentioned earlier the guy that I grew up with plays principal clarinet in the St. Louis Symphony. Mm-hmm. His conductor, David Robertson, a few years back, this is while Boulez was still alive, is a Boulez disciple. He when Boulez stepped down from conducting the ensemble in Paris, David Robertson was his handpicked successor. He knows Boulez very well, and he approached Scott and he said, "You should do this piece, but the piece has a lot of pre-recorded parts, and you need like 8 speakers to do it live with a live audio engineer." And Scott's like, "Where the hell am I going to? I can't even get started with that." Well, during the course of my life, here I met this amazing producer. So I said to Scott, that idea that David said a couple of years ago, we could probably, I don't know, try it. I got this engineer. I got you. Let's see what we can do. So it just happened to be that we basically put it together for spec. That is to say, we thought it would be good enough that somebody would want to perform it somewhere. And we got it placed via the St. Louis Symphony into a museum in St. Louis called the Pulitzer Foundation, which is this amazing privately owned museum. I think Emily Pulitzer owns it. And it's a really awesome space for doing electronic music. And we did it there, and it was a huge success. And then I got involved in this space in Brooklyn. And I said, why don't we do it in Brooklyn? And over the course of it being done those couple of times, it gained the attention of the original guy who had the idea in the first place, which was David Robertson. And Boulez passed, unfortunately, this last year. And he said, well, since I love Boulez and we have this ready-made production, let's use it. And they used it as the concerto for the opening series for the season at St. Louis. And it was just exhilarating to see the outcome of a project that had just basically been an idea. And then I just put a couple of friends together, and then suddenly we opened a season of a major orchestra. It was, and then, also just basically They had a huge cantata for the first half, and then to start the second half was just one clarinet player on stage for 20 minutes. Was awesome. It was hair raising. It was fucking weird. And standing like on the conductor's podium, lording over the whole audience like an enormous statue, playing his clarinet with, literally 8 speakers or actually in that hall there were 12 speakers bouncing his sound all over the place. Who would ever think that you would see something like that on the opener of a major symphony orchestra when you're going to play Pines of Rome and have the Tchaikovsky violin concerto? It's just like,
right. It
was spectacular, and that was one moment where I did sort of sit back and go, fucking nice. But, but again, that all came out of personal relationships and just being a thinking person in the right place and putting the right people together when it's going to work. I'm bright. Scott's phenomenal. He's a brilliant clarinet player. He's smart as shit. And Adam is a genius. And so, again, not to bring up Louis C.K. again, but he's a guy that I sort of idolize for doing things himself, pricing things himself.
You remind me of him a little bit, like dry sense of humor. And living in New York and doing your own thing, it's like,
it's possible.
There's a good parallel.
It's possible to do it. You just you have to be legit. I think you can't be, and you know what, if you're not the world's greatest player or singer, that's not the point. The point is that you're going after being the greatest singer or player or whatever you're at in the world. That's the interesting process, because the guys who get there at the top of the field who are Lang Lang and Yo-Yo Ma are playing major benefits, and Josh Bell and these guys, people make that. That's great. But most of us are not going to be that guy.
Right.
If you want to, that's fine. For me, I kind of want to do something different. But if you're not going to be that guy, then you're going to have to be somebody. If you're going to be somebody in this business, and nowadays, you just got to do it by the force of your personality and the force of your hard work and your willingness to look at what works. Be honest about you got to be really honest about your shortcomings in this business.
Yeah. Definitely. You have to be honest with yourself. I 100% agree.
And if you have gaping holes, then you got to partner with somebody. I always have to partner with somebody because contrary to my persona that I wear, including now, I have horrible social anxiety. I have a very difficult time talking to people on the phone. I have a very difficult time even responding in email if it's an action item. So I have to basically have an assistant that I can direct, who's I call him my conciliary. He's like, he helps me achieve the direction that I want to achieve when I get locked up. And I get locked up easily on a personal level when I have to make a phone call or talk to someone. When I'm in the activity, I'm great. When I have to do it and I'm on the phone, I'm like, hey, how you doing? Everything's great. Perfect. But inside, it took me an hour to make that phone call. And so if you have holes like that, then you gotta find somebody who's perfectly willing to fill that hole, who maybe you fill a hole that they have too. Oh, hey now. That's what she said.
That went right over my head.
That's what, no, wait a minute. Hey.
I wasn't in Howard Stern mode. And then you snapped me back into it.
Baba Booey.
Baba Booey. Oh my God, I love him. Just love him. Have you seen him at the gym?
I don't go to that gym anymore, but I see him on the street. Sometimes I see Beth and I want to yell at her, but I don't because she seems nice.
I know. She does seem nice.
Yeah, come on.
You see him on the street, you see Howard Stern on the street.
Sure. Who I like to yell at, though? I do see Ronnie, the limo driver. I see him waiting for him because Stern lives like 3 blocks away from me. So I know where the sort of, the non-public entrance is. And I will often see Ronnie, the limo driver, waiting for him outside, and I give him a little ration of shit as I pass by, just because. Why not?
Yeah, what is it like? What does he
Let's
say
fuck with
back?
Ronnie. No, he doesn't say shit because I'm sure guys fuck with him all day long. He totally
Yeah.
doesn't pay attention to me, but I'm like, hey, Ronnie, you fucking moron. He doesn't give a shit.
So you have social anxiety, like to call somebody on the phone, but you don't have a problem
Well, it's like
yelling
when you're on
back.
the street, you're a character. It's like in New York, there's a certain anonymity that everybody has because everybody's doing their own thing, so nobody's truly paying attention to you.
It's true, because last time I visited you, Santa Claus came up to me on the street, literally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean there are actual crazy folk on the
yeah,
street, so nobody's actually paying attention to your dumb ass. That actually is kind of it's kind of comforting to me. In fact, and most of the time when I'm walking around, I have a hat on, I've got my beard, and I just kind of like, I'm anonymous. I might as well either be a tourist of some sort, or I'm just a guy who's going somewhere. But I try
right.
to just like put on my headphones, put on my baseball cap, and just like don't talk to anybody and go do my business.
Yeah, you can be invisible in the sea of people.
Yeah, it's weird. People think that so many people will freak you out, but actually it just gives you this weird blanket of anonymity.
Do you think you could be doing what you're doing if you weren't in New York City?
I think it would be hard.
Hmm.
I think that you'd have to be somewhere. I'm thinking of other places. I don't think you'd have to be in a big city, but I think it would help. But I
Yeah.
think that somewhere like, I'm thinking for some reason of like Asheville, North Carolina, or Santa Fe,
So kind of
Boulder,
artsy.
Colorado. Yeah, places where there are communities of interesting people
Yeah.
that can make interesting things. Cincinnati actually, oddly enough, is a bit like that. And the guy who does all of my art is oddly enough from Cincinnati. And not to harp on an idea that I brought up earlier, but again, I believe in the singular genius of people, and he does all of the art for all of my releases. He does the art for any posters that I do. He does the art for the website. So one of the things that I was trying to do when I started OpenG Records was to have a really unified look to everything. Like if there was a release from my label, that it looks and sounds like a release from OpenG Records, like an old school recording house like Motown or Sun or Stax Vault, where all of the releases had a similar look, all of them had a similar sound, and a lot of them were done with the same house band or house artists.
Right. Did you make any vinyl?
No, not yet, but I wanted to, and it just was something that didn't sell enough. The thing about vinyl is it is extraordinarily expensive,
Is it?
and it's very limited because of the amount of material that you can put on a recording. The good thing about vinyl is that you can get a higher fidelity than you can with CD. You can actually you can press things that are recorded at a higher and nicer bit rate than you can onto a CD. But you can only do about 12 to 14 good minutes per side if you want that kind of quality. It's really hard to find pieces that last less than 20 minutes.
In the classical world, for sure.
Right. That are worth pressing.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that I want to do, that I wanted to do with one particular release, but it would have to be the exact right thing. It would have to be something that I knew would be something that people would buy, because otherwise it's a huge expense.
Right.
For stuff that is will be a boutique item, because people do not, in terms of physical media, other than vinyl, it's worthless. A CD is basically a demo.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason to press a CD is to have something to give to people, like a card.
Right.
Otherwise, it's all, every single person is digital, or every single buy is going to be digital these days. Right. In fact, I brought a CD to National Sawdust, which is the venue in Brooklyn, and it is state of the art. And I brought a CD to use as my backing track for New York Counterpoint, and they were like, "Do you have a online box that we could download this from? I mean, we could burn this and then play it from upstairs." So it's just like, even like the most cutting edge art houses now don't even have CD players in them. It's just done. So
wow, that's funny.
It's done.
It's already done. I know. I don't know where my CDs are. They're like, I don't know. Exactly.
The problem is that for the producer, Spotify sucks. All of the streaming, I think they're brilliant, especially for a consumer, like sitting down with your playlist or shit that you don't know with Pandora or Spotify is great. But the people who produce that art make no money on it whatsoever. It's really, really onerous for the producers. And that's another reason why the fan base is so important. And to get back to a band that I love, Radiohead, I could pirate their stuff. In fact, they released the first record they released outside of a major label just on their own was called In Rainbows, and you could pay whatever you wanted for it, including nothing.
Wow.
It was fine for the band. They averaged $16 per sale. Averaged.
It's amazing.
So that means that half the people being able to pay what they want paid more than the going price of a CD at that time, which was $15. Because why?
Because it was awesome. Yeah.
Because they love the band, because they really believe in what they do, because the band has given to them over the course of years stuff to, I lost my connection to server. Reconnected.
Good.
After we waxed philosophical on how wonderful my internet connection was earlier. So I think I was at the end of that thought anyway. Yeah, love is the important part.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, when you think about it, because like you said, you felt like Radiohead really connected and people fell in love with who they were as people.
Yeah. Just to let you know, I'm getting like an echo effect with you. In case you don't hear that at all?
No, I don't.
Okay, we'll just keep it going then.
Okay. I think it should be fine.
Yeah. Do you get to edit these afterwards, or do they just go straight?
Well, you know what's interesting about this, and it's just going to be on my podcast. I'm just going to tell you. The first time I recorded someone, I was worried about the sound, and what's actually happening is that it's not recording our call per se. It's recording you directly into your computer and me directly into my computer.
I see.
So then when it's uploaded, it's separate tracks, and then then it combines. So I think there's a way to edit probably. I'm still learning about that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So are you going to be soloing anymore? I saw that you soloed with the Harrisburg Symphony, and what piece did you play, and how did you get that gig? Did you just call them up, or what happened?
Well, that's another outcome of a personal relationship. The composer of that piece, Jeremy Gill, is a guy who is from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania originally, and has gone on to sort of both have a happening career as a composer and maintained a favorite son sort of aspect within the community in Harrisburg. And I was playing in Harrisburg a lot because that's actually where my wife is from. And there was a chamber music series there, and they sort of had the idea to commission a piece for the orchestra that Jeremy would write and that he would do for me, because of our connections with the place and our personal friendship. And so that's how that came out. Was a commission for Jeremy that he ended up writing as a concerto for me. And I was really lucky because I had about 6 months to prepare for the music that was mostly empty. So I was able to actually give those premiere performances from memory, which was insane. I will never fucking do that again. But you know, it was part of, it's part of trying to maintain what you're talking about here with me. And that is my own sense of being a player first. You know, no matter what I do in my career, if I were to produce something that won a Grammy for someone else or whatever, or won my own Grammy, however unlikely that might be, I would still consider myself a clarinetist first. I always lead with that in my resume. I always lead with that when I talk to people. And so if I'm going to try to be at the top of my game and also be somebody who's worth having a commission and having a concerto premiere, I would absolutely play Mozart or Nielsen from memory. So why not this? And I knew one of the most prodigious things that I'd heard of was a flutist, Carol Winsence, gives major concerto premieres, Chris Rouse, Joan Tower from memory. And I've always thought, God damn, that is prodigious. And so I was like, well, I've got the time, I'm going to do it. And it went well enough, and Jeremy's had a good enough career that I just recorded the same concerto actually last, I think it was November, with Boston Modern Orchestra Project, and that'll come out, I think, in the summer. So again, a lot of really sort of amazing things came in contact because of personal relationships and just going after things. And, you know, there's a sort of shitty axiom that says luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And that's kind of what I feel like. I feel like when the opportunity presents itself, I've been able to have the forethought to just go for it, and see what happens on the other side. And for the most part, good things have happened. And it didn't happen for a while. It took a while for things to get into a position where they were happening, and I was really down about it, especially in the first 2 years of doing this. Things weren't really happening, and I didn't really feel like working hard at it anymore. And I talked to, it was actually my brother who gave me a really great piece of advice, and it was about a quarterback. A lot of things come back to athletics with my family. A quarterback named Kurt Warner, who ended up being an MVP quarterback and winning the Super Bowl with the St. Louis Rams at the time. And he had been working in a warehouse. He'd been a college quarterback. He'd played some in the Arena Football League. It hadn't really panned out for him. So he's working in a warehouse, football season's going, and he's staying in shape. He's on his off time, he's working with a coach. He's keeping his strength up. He works out with a quarterback coach. He just stays ready. And when the call came, he stepped in and he won the Super Bowl and he got an MVP.
Wow.
So, you know, that's what my brother told me. He's like, while it's not happening, you stay in fucking really good shape so that when the call comes and you stand in there, you kill it.
Yeah.
And that's basically, what, between that and the 5 year, try not to judge anything past 5 years is pretty much what I just try to do. Just try to put myself in a position to do well. And then when the opportunity presents itself, don't overthink it and just go see where it goes.
Yeah.
And be kind of stupid about it. It's a little bit like American Idol confidence. They don't know how good I am. Everybody knows I sing so good. And then you're just like, what in the fuck are you thinking about? But it's those people who have the most enthusiasm, most confidence, are the people who can actually do it, who don't.
Yeah.
And it comes down to, like, I forget what it's called. I think it might be called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is basically, in order to be good at something, you have to have the critical thinking skills, or in order to know you're not good at something, you have to have the same critical thinking skills that it takes to actually be good at it. So when you truly don't know that you suck at something, you also don't have the critical or sort of qualitative thinking skills to understand that you suck at it, which is why people like Sarah Palin don't understand how fucking dumb they are, because they can't see it. They can't. Have you ever, listen, we've all done this. You sat next to a player who is not in your class. Yeah. I don't want to say sucks, but for what is average or just kind of whatever. And then at the end of the gig, they're just like, we did great. And they might give you some advice about your own playing. And you're just like, motherfucker, what are you talking about? It's because they don't hear it. They can't. It literally takes the same skills to hear it as it does to produce it. And so if you can't hear it, then you, A, can't produce it, and B, you don't know when somebody else is producing it. I don't know how I got onto that subject, but
I don't know either, but it made me think of the most recent gig I did here was with the opera, and I saw someone there who you used to call by their first name was started just with fucking. You just called them fucking and then their name. Like, you didn't call them their name. It was, and I know that's not very nice. I'm not going to say who it is, but this just reminds me of that.
Yeah, the people with the least are the most confident, and the people with the most just doubt themselves all day long. And if you could just, like, getting past the doubt is sometimes just being like, just saying, fuck it, I'm just going to keep doing it, and maybe I'm dumb, but we'll find out at the end. Totally.
So, I am enjoying this so much, but I do want to wrap it up so people have a somewhat concise interview to listen to. So I want to ask you two final questions.
All right.
The first one is, what's a one habit or behavior you've developed that has made you has made the most difference in your career so far?
That's one at a time. Okay.
Yeah.
Question number one, answer. Doing the work. I'm a big believer in a series of books that starts with a book called The War of Art. And I actually gave a couple of these to your husband when he was here.
Yes, I saw them. And I actually have The War of Art.
I don't know why I can't remember the author's name at the moment. But
Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah, Stephen Pressfield.
Yes.
And his whole point, now he has a different idea about things because he believes in God, and he thinks a lot of the stuff comes from God, the creative spirit or muse or whatever. But it also works if you think that it's an internal thing. And that is basically, as artists, we have to create art. Otherwise you're not an artist. It's what we're meant to do. It's what we're supposed to do. And it's the times that you're not doing it that you feel the most miserable. And that's, when I'm fucking off is when I feel like I'm the biggest jerk, but I can be the laziest person in the world. So his whole point is, forget about all of that. Mm-hmm. Just do the work. Don't worry about whether it's good or bad in the moment. Just decide, okay, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., I'm going to work every day, or today, or whatever schedule, whatever chunk of time that you need to create for yourself, then that becomes your territory that you own for that period of time. You don't think about how good you are compared to other people. You don't think about what you're doing compared to anything else besides, I need to do this work, and I'm going to try to make it as good as I can within this space right now. Yeah. And you string a few of those days together, and then you got something. And for someone like me who's bent towards laziness, just figuring out a structure and sticking with it until it became part of my daily habit probably made more of a difference than anything else. The actual realizing that the work ethic besides the talent was actually key. And then figuring out structures to make that happen for myself when I'm fucking lazy as shit. So really, I fucking am. So I have to like be like, you're going to sit here until the clock says 12,
right,
motherfucker. And until then, that's what's happening. And lo and behold, I find I do really good work because I'm just like, I don't listen to other clarinet players anymore. I don't listen to anything except for my own input on what's really good and what's not good. And I think, I build a trust up enough that work works. Right.
And you trust yourself and your own knowing, which is
exactly, it's hard to do, but you just have to be like, man, if this sucked, I think I would know.
Right. I know. Imagine that. You might actually know yourself if you just look.
Yeah. Sure, there are things to work on, but if it's a dead end, it's like, it's pretty hard to keep banging at that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the last question, who in the classical world inspires you, and tell me why in one sentence?
Well, I probably have to go back to Paola Pristini. And I think that she inspires me the most because she has been able to create a new job title as 21st century impresario, and has done it with integrity and decency, and helping other musicians out, and that's who I want to be.
Awesome. I need to talk to her too.
Yeah, she would definitely. She would definitely talk to you. I could make that happen for sure.
Sweet.
I mean, she's busy as fuck, but she would definitely take the time to talk to you. She's very generous and especially helping, frankly, another woman out. Trying to do something somewhere else. I think would be something that would turn her on.
I know, because my list of people to interview are essentially all men right now.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
She'll blow the doors off all of those guys. She's a great interview. She's super nice. She's great.
Awesome. Thank you for introducing me to her, even though you haven't done that yet, but just telling me about her. And Chris, thank you so much. I'm so thrilled about this interview. And everything that you told me today is so inspiring and meaningful. And your general theme of friendship and relationships is just, it's just something to build foundation on. I really love it. So thank you so much.
Very, very happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks. Bye.